Hey guys, tonight we begin with something cold. Not open the fridge and shiver cold, but your eyelashes are freezing together cold. You're about to wake up in the ice age and you're hungry, which is inconvenient because your pantry consists of whatever you can dig out of snow chip, out of ice, or chase until it collapses from exhaustion. You probably won't survive this, but let's see how far you get. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up in darkness, not just the sun isn't up yet. Darkness, but the kind that's been hanging around for months. The Ice Age night isn't a few hours long. It's more like a season that decided to take a gap year. You're wrapped in a hide blanket that smells like the reindeer it used to be, and your breath forms little clouds that drift away like they're trying to escape before you do. The inside of your shelter, a half-buried hut of mammoth bones and hide creaks as the wind pushes at it. Somewhere outside, snow squeaks under the weight of something moving. Could be a deer, could be a wolf, could be a deer being eaten by a wolf. Either way, you're not getting breakfast in bed. Your stomach growls, and you try to remember what's left from yesterday. A few shreds of dried meat, stiff as a piece of rawhide, and something that might have been a root before it froze into a small edible rock. That's not going to cut it. You'll have to step outside. The cold hits you like a slap from an iceberg. Your fur boots, if you can call them boots, are just layers of hide stitched together with sinew. You shuffle through the snow, every step sinking past your ankles, every breath burning your throat with icy air. You have no basket, no lunchbox. Just a stone scraper at your waist and a vague hope that nature left you something chewable. First stop, the food cache. You lift a slab of frozen snow that hides the pit where you keep supplies away from scavengers. A puff of frost spills out, and inside you see disappointment. A fishtail, frozen solid, sticking out of the snow, like a sad little flag. You chip at it with your scraper, free it from the ice, and gnaw on it like it's a popsicle from the underworld. It's chewy cold and tastes faintly of river mud. You remember warmer months, short frantic weeks, when the sun barely set, and you crammed your body full of berries, roots, and meat drying and smoking whatever you couldn't eat right away. But now, it's deep winter, and those bright berries are just a memory. The only fruit you'll find today is the frost clinging to your eyelashes. Still, you keep walking. Your best bet is to find something trapped in the snow, a rabbit that misjudged a drift. Or, if you're really lucky, leftovers from a predator's kill. It's not glamorous, but in the Ice Age, you take whatever calories you can find. And that's when you spotted a patch of disturbed snow fur poking through. You kneel, brush away the powder, and find the stiff body of an Arctic hare. Its eyes are glazed, its fur crusted with frost. But in this weather, it's practically pre-refrigerated. You don't have the luxury of cooking right now. The cold saps your energy too quickly, so you cut a strip of meat with your scraper and chew. It's stringy. It's cold. It's food. The warmth of the calories spreads slowly through you, even as your jaw aches from biting frozen flesh. You think about saving the rest for later, but later is a dangerous word here. In the Ice Age, later often belongs to the wolves. As you walk back to your shelter, meat in hand, the horizon lightens just a shade, reminding you that day still exists. Somewhere. But for now, The Ice Age breakfast is done. Tomorrow it might be a root, or a frozen fish, or nothing. And that's the real menu of survival here, whatever's still moving slower than you are. You've made it through the morning with a frozen hare and the faint dignity of not being eaten first. Congratulations. But by midday, your stomach is already negotiating a coup against your better judgment. The Ice Age doesn't do second breakfasts. It does survival meals, and that means finding something bigger and more dangerous. Somewhere in the distance, a low resonant sound rolls over the frozen plain. Not wind, not thunder. It's the grunt of something that could feed you for a week, maybe a month, if you could bring it down a mammoth. The walking grocery store of the Pleistocene. A creature so big that your tiny human brain can't quite decide whether to worship it or throw a spear at it. The problem is, you're not exactly armed to the tusks. In your hand, a spear tipped with chipped flint lashed to a shaft with rawhide. It's sharp enough to scratch the hide of a mammoth, but scratch isn't what you need. You need to kill it quickly, before it turns you into a red stain on white snow. You're not hunting alone. No one is foolish enough to face a woolly tank without backup. Your small band of shivering, half-starved companions fans out, moving slow to avoid crunching the snow too loudly. Breath hangs in the air like smoke signals, and the wind carries the scent of your sweat right toward your prey. The mammoth headlow is busy scraping snow away with its trunk to get at the frozen grass beneath. It hasn't noticed you yet. Now comes the part Ice Age hunters know too well to throw. You crouch, grip the spear shaft until your knuckles ache, and let it fly with every muscle you've got left. The point hits, not deep enough to drop it, but enough to make it bellow. The ground trembles. You wonder if maybe, just maybe, this was a bad idea. The rest of the hunt is a blur of adrenaline and terror. More spears fly, some hitting, some bouncing off its thick hide like badly thrown insults. The mammoth charges once, twice, but your group manages to scatter each time, pulling it toward a patch of ice you scouted earlier. The creature's massive weight cracks the surface just enough to slow it down. Then, one final thrust to a vulnerable spot, the neck where the hide is thinner. It's over. The great body slumps, steam rising from its wounds into the cold air. There's no celebration yet. You're too tired, too aware that predators will smell this feast from miles away. The butchering begins immediately. Stone tools saw through hide, as tough as cured leather, peeling it back to reveal thick red meat that still radiates warmth. You eat some right there raw, because your body needs heat and fuel now, not after you've gathered firewood. It's chewy, iron-rich, and utterly primal, the kind of meal that tastes like it might just keep you alive another week. Someone cuts chunks of fat, the real prize for cooking later. Fat burns slow inside you, the Ice Age equivalent of a battery pack. Every part of the mammoth is claimed meat, for today strips to dry, and smoke for later bones. For tools and shelter frames, sinew, for binding hide, for clothing. Nothing goes to waste. You even collect the marrow from the largest bones, cracking them open with rocks and sucking the rich, greasy warmth straight from the splintered ends. By the time you trudge back toward camp, loaded with more meat than you thought you could carry, the snow is stained the air heavy with the scent of blood and victory. You're not just full, you're alive, and in the Ice Age, those two things are the same. But even as you chew one last piece of warm meat before curling up under your reindeer hide, you know the truth. Tomorrow, the herd will move farther away. The next hunt will be harder. and you'll be hungry again sooner than you think. The fire in your shelter has burned down to embers, throwing a dim orange glow over the heap of mammoth meat you and the others dragged back yesterday. It's a sight both comforting and dangerous. Comforting because you're not immediately starving, dangerous because it smells like an all-you-can-eat buffet to every predator within a mile radius. You're chewing a strip of half-dried meat when you notice one of the elders squatting over a mammoth leg bone. It's as long as your arm, thick as a tree branch, and heavy enough to make a decent weapon. But he's not planning to hit anyone with it. He's holding a hammerstone. One sharp crack against the middle of the bone, then another, and the hollow sound changes to a satisfying splinter. The smell hits you first, warm, fatty, almost sweet. It's marrow. Ice Age dessert. Not the kind you save for the end of the meal, but the kind you dive into before anyone else gets the bigger scoop. You've eaten marrow before, but not like this. In summer, you'd roast the bone a little to soften the fat, letting it drip onto whatever you were eating. But in the dead cold of winter, the marrow stays thick and creamy, clinging to the splintered bone in pale golden clumps. You grab a shard and use it like a spoon, scraping out the inside. The texture is smooth, almost buttery, melting on your tongue in a way no frozen meat ever could. The taste rich, a little nutty, and so packed with calories that you can feel your body warming from the inside. It's not just food, it's insulation. You eat slowly at first, savoring until instinct takes over, and you're scraping at the last stubborn pockets like your life depends on it. Because it does. Marrow is the Ice Age's secret weapon. You can strip a carcass, bare smoke the meat, stretch the fat, and still weeks later crack open a bone for one last burst of energy. That's why bones are stored carefully in pits or under snow. They're like time-release food capsules for when hunting fails. The others are working their own bones, now cracking, scraping, sucking, sharing. Children gnaw at smaller reindeer bones, too young yet to wield a hammerstone, but smart enough to squeeze out every drop of warmth from the hollow inside. You notice the elder tossing the emptied bones into a separate pile. Later they'll be shaped into needles, fish hooks, or even flutes for the rare moments when there's energy for music. Of course, marrow eating isn't without hazards. Every so often, someone smacks a bone too hard and sends greasy shards flying, or cuts a hand on a jagged edge. And if you leave the pile unattended, foxes will sneak in, gnawing on what you miss, leaving nothing but tooth-scored scraps. By the time your hands are slick with fat and your stomach feels pleasantly heavy, the cold outside has deepened into that special kind of Ice Age night where the air bites harder than any wolf. You curl up by the embers, feeling the slow burn of marrow energy settling into your limbs. It won't last forever. Tomorrow, you might be digging under snow for roots or picking over what's left of a carcass the wolves abandoned. But for now, you're full, and the wind outside sounds just a little less cruel. Morning comes, or rather the sky turns from black to a lighter shade of black, and the meat pile is smaller than you remember. Not because you ate it all, but because someone forgot to pile enough snow over it last night. The tracks outside tell the story. Foxes, maybe a wolverine, had a feast while you slept. That's the Ice Age for you. If you leave food unguarded, it walks away on four legs, which means today's mission is different. No mammoth in sight, no reindeer herd crossing the valley. Just empty plains, wind-scoured and silent. If you want to eat, you're going to have to dig.
Careful, or there
Root
won't be any
hunting
left
in the
to
Ice
eat.
Age is an art form nobody enjoys. You start by looking for signs, tiny ridges in the snow, where plants grew before winter swallowed them. or the browned, brittle tips of stalks sticking out like brittle spears. With luck, those stalks are attached to something underground, tubers, bulbs, or rhizomes that never saw the sun, but stored enough starch to keep you alive for another day. The ground is hard as stone. You use a digging stick, basically a long, sharpened branch hardened in the fire, to punch through the snow and chip away at the frozen dirt beneath. The sound is dull, the rhythm tiring. Your fingers ache even inside their fur wrappings. Breath clouds your vision every time you lean in close. Finally, you hit something. Not rock, not ice, something softer, fibrous. You scrape away more soil and pull out a root, long and knobby, coated in frost and dirt. It's an Ice Age parsnip, if you're feeling generous. In truth, it looks like something you'd normally throw to the pigs if you had pigs. Eating it raw is a test of willpower. The flesh is firm, almost woody, and carries the bitter tang of survival. You gnaw slowly each bite, releasing just enough sweetness to remind you why you bothered. In better seasons, you'd roast it in the embers until the sugars caramelize. But today, you need energy now. Others in your group are finding their own prizes, onion-like bulbs with papery skins, thick taproots from ancient wild carrots, and even a few strands of cattail rhizome pulled from the icy edge of a stream. Every find is held up like treasure, even though they're all destined to be chewed into fibrous paste. There's danger here too. Some plants are poisonous, and the line between edible and deadly isn't always obvious. One root might keep you alive. Another, almost identical, might keep you from seeing another sunrise. That's why the elders test new finds, cautiously chewing a tiny piece and waiting to see if their stomach revolts. No one wants a repeat of the bad lily bulb incident. By midday, you've gathered a small pile, not enough to fill you, but enough to stretch the meat rations a little longer. You carry them back in a sling, made from hide your arms sore from digging your nails lined with dirt that hasn't seen daylight in months. Back at camp, the roots are scraped, sliced, and dropped into a skin bag of water hung near the fire. They'll soften slowly, taking on the smoky tang of the hearth until they're just edible enough to mix with shreds of meat or fat. It's not a feast. It's not even good. But it's something to chew, something to keep your jaw moving and your stomach from folding in on itself. As night falls, you tuck one last root into your pouch, a reserve for tomorrow. Out here, food security is less about planning and more about having just enough to survive the next cold sunrise. The cold is sharper today, the kind that makes the inside of your nose freeze after 2 breaths. Snow drifts curl like frozen waves across the valley floor, and the wind moves through them with a sound like someone slowly tearing cloth. Meat is low, roots are lower, which leaves one option: fish. You remember the stream that runs just beyond the ridge, the one that's now locked under a thick glassy lid of ice. In warmer moons, it teems with trout and char flashing silver in the shallows. Now the water is a dark, slow-moving shadow beneath ice thick enough to hold your weight. The trick is getting through to it without freezing yourself in the process. You sling your stone axe over your shoulder and trek toward the sound, not of water, but of nothing at all. It's a strange quiet, the kind that only exists when everything is sleeping under ice. You reach the bank, test the surface with your foot. Solid. You kneel, choose a spot where bubbles are frozen in the ice like trapped ghosts, and start chopping. The first blows bounce, sending dull shocks into your arms. You have to hit harder, sharper, using the axe edge like a wedge. Chips of ice sting your face as they fly. Slowly, the ice gives turning from opaque white to thin, brittle sheets. At last, a hole opens, and the smell of river water rushes up cold mineral and faintly alive. Now comes the patience. You lie flat, peering into the hole, spear poised. The spear tip is bone barbed with chipped stone and tied with sinew to a shaft that's taller than you. Beneath the ice shapes move slow, lazy arcs of silver and brown. The cold makes them sluggish. That's your advantage. You wait muscles, aching from the stillness. When a fish drifts near, you strike a quick downward jab. The spear tip breaks the surface with a dull thunk, and you feel the weight as it catches. You pull it up water, streaming from the struggling body, and for a moment, its beautiful scales, catching what little light filters through the gray sky. Then, it's just food. The fish is already half frozen by the time you lay it on the ice. You spear another and another, until you have enough to justify the trip back. Carrying them is easy, they're stiff as clubs. Back at camp, the question is whether to eat them raw or cook them. Cooking means gathering wood, tending fire, waiting. Raw means biting through icy flesh and risking the teeth you've still got. You compromise, slice thin strips, and lay them near the fire on a flat rock, letting the heat thaw them just enough. The flesh softens, releasing a clean, oily smell that makes everyone drift closer. The taste is bracing cold, almost sweet, with the faint tang of the river. You chew slowly, feeling the oil coat your tongue, the protein sinking into your belly like an anchor. The skin, tougher, is roasted until it blisters, then chewed like leather gum for the fat it holds. Even the bones are crushed for the marrow inside, though fish bones are small and stingy compared to the mammoth's gifts. Nothing is wasted. Heads go into a pot of snowmelt to make a thin broth. Guts are buried far from camp to keep predators away. Tomorrow, the hole in the ice will be frozen over again, and you'll have to start from scratch. As night settles, the wind rises, rattling the hide walls of your shelter. You curl up, smelling faintly of river, and smoke full enough to ignore the cold for a few hours. Out here, that's as close to luxury as you'll ever get. You wake to the sound of snow being crunched under heavy steps, not the quick darting noise of a fox, but the slow, deliberate tread of something big. You reach for your spear before you've even sat up. Through a gap in the hide wall, you see it a reindeer head down, foraging under the snow. Its lean ribs faintly visible under its winter coat, but to you, it might as well be carved from solid food. The herd has passed you by for weeks now, and this straggler is an opportunity you can't ignore. The hunt is short and brutal. You and two others fan out, moving in low arcs to close the space. The reindeer's head snaps up, nostrils flaring, but the snow slows its escape. Your spear finds its mark, the shoulder, and it stumbles. A second blow ends the chase. The first thing you do isn't skinning. It isn't even butchering. It's the blood. In this cold, fresh blood doesn't stay liquid for long, but in those few minutes, it's a source of heat and nutrition you can't afford to waste. One of your companions kneels beside the fallen animal, holding a skin bag beneath the wound, while another massages the neck to keep the flow steady. Steam rises in the frigid air, turning the scene into a strange red cloud. You take your share in a carved horn cup, still warm from the animal's body. The first sip is startling, metallic, thick, almost sweet, in a way that makes your stomach tighten and your body sigh at the same time. It's not a drink in the way we think of one now. It's a rush of iron and fat, quick energy you can feel moving into your limbs. Blood drinking isn't rare out here. It's survival science passed down from people who learned that warmth can come from the inside. The elders say it keeps your strength up in long hunts, staves off hunger, even sharpens the mind. You're not sure about the last one, but you know it keeps you from shaking in the cold. Of course, there are rules. You don't take too much from an animal you plan to keep alive. Sometimes herders will nick a vein in a domesticated reindeer. Take a few mouthfuls and let it heal. But a kill like this, you take what you can, because tomorrow there might be nothing. Once the flow slows, the bag is tied and set aside to congeal into something more like pudding.
This stew is
Later,
ready.
it'll be mixed with fat and berries, if you have any, to make a kind of high-calorie paste that keeps for days. The rest of the reindeer will be skinned, butchered, and divided. But for now, the blood is the fastest route from hunger to energy. You lick your lips, the iron taste lingering. It's not a flavor you crave, but in this world, craving has nothing to do with it. You drink because you have to, because the cold is always waiting to take the heat out of you. As you trudge back toward camp with your share of meat, the skin bag swings at your side, heavy with what's left. Tonight, it'll be part of the meal. Tomorrow may be gone, but for now, you're warmer than you were an hour ago. And that can mean the difference between seeing another sunrise or becoming part of the snow yourself. By now you've learned that the Ice Age doesn't hand out meals. It hides them in plain sight, waiting for the desperate to look twice. Today, that lesson comes in the form of something green, or rather, greenish-brown, clinging to the edges of a frozen shoreline like nature's forgotten lint. The reindeer meat from yesterday is already shrinking, most of it hanging in strips near the fire, the rest buried under snow to keep scavengers at bay. You need something to go with it, something light but filling. You scan the icy banks of the nearby lake eyes, stinging from the wind, and there it is, algae, frozen in place, where water once lapped. It doesn't look appetizing. Slimy when thawed, brittle, and papery when frozen, it clings to the rocks in tangled mats. But to your people, this isn't pond scum. It's food and medicine, and sometimes insulation for a drafty hide wall. Out here, it's what you make of it. You crouch and chip at it with a scraper, the ice breaking into salty vegetal shards. Some pieces are laced with grit, others with a faint smell of fish. You gather it into a hide sling, careful not to take too much from one spot. You'll be back here again before the cold breaks.
Good.
Not far away,
Well tonight.
there's another kind of green moss, pushing through cracks in the ice where snow has melted just enough. It's soft under your fingers, springy and faintly earthy smelling. The elders say moss can be eaten fresh, boiled, or dried, and ground into powder to thicken stews. They also say it will keep you alive when the meat is gone, though you'll never feel truly full.
The wind.
Back at camp, you thaw the algae near the fire. It curls and softens, releasing a smell that's half sea breeze, half old boot. You tear off a strip and chew. It's salty, chewy, and faintly sweet, with a crunch of ice crystals in the middle. It's not bad, in fact. After weeks of meat and roots, it tastes almost fresh. The moss you toss into a pot with melting snow, along with slivers of reindeer fat. The result is less a soup and more a hot greenish sludge that coats your tongue like warm mud. You eat it anyway, letting the heat chase away the chill in your fingers. This kind of food doesn't just feed your body. It fills the space in your mind where hopelessness likes to sit. You know you've eaten something alive, something that grew here despite the cold, something that will grow again when the ice pulls back. As night falls, you store the leftover moss in a skin bag, wrapping it tight. Tomorrow, if the hunt fails and the snow drifts in, you'll be glad to have it. Out here, survival isn't about what you want. It's about what's still here when everything else is gone. You almost forget the taste of sweetness until you see it again, a flash of dark red against the pale fur of a hide bundle. It's a reminder that once, not long ago, the sun stayed in the sky for most of the day, and the land offered more than frozen meat and roots. In summer, berries are everywhere, low bushes sagging with weight, the air thick with the smell of ripeness. You and your people spend days filling woven baskets and hide sacks, not just eating until your lips are stained purple, but preparing for the long cold to come. Every berry you can't swallow on the spot is dried in the sun or smoked over the fire until it shrivels into a chewy, wrinkled jewel. Those bundles are your treasure now. Hidden high on a shelf of mammoth ribs, inside the shelter, away from damp and away from greedy hands.
At least we have the fire.
They're small, each bundle barely enough for a handful per person, but their value is greater than any spearhead. Today is a day to open one. The hunt yesterday brought back nothing but windburn, and the dried fish stash is down to its last brittle fillets. You untie the bundle with care, the knot stiff from frost, and the scent that escapes is a ghost of summer tart, rich and faintly smoky from the drying fires. Dried berries aren't just a treat, they're medicine. Their sugars give quick energy, and their tartness cuts through the heaviness of meat and fat. Some say they keep sickness away, though whether that's magic or just the relief of variety, no one really knows. You pass them around, each person taking only a few. They're chewed slowly, almost reverently, until the skins soften and the juice bursts over your tongue. Even the seeds are swallowed, because waste is a luxury you can't afford. A few of the older hunters drop theirs straight into the boiling pot, letting the tartness seep into the broth, turning it a faint red. There's talk, quiet and brief, of the berry-gathering days, the sun on your back, the sound of insects, the occasional thrill of finding a bush no one else has spotted. But those are memories you don't linger on. The berries in your mouth are the only summer you have right now, and you need them to last. When the bundle is tied shut again, it's lighter, maybe half of what it was. You hide it back on the rib shelf, the space between your shoulders and the cold world outside just a little warmer for having tasted sweetness again. Tomorrow, the snow will still be deep, the wind still sharp, and the hunt still uncertain. But tonight, you fall asleep with the tang of berries on your tongue, a reminder that even the Ice Age can't freeze everything. The reindeer carcass from 2 days ago is now just a pile of bones, hide scraps, and a scattering of hoof prints in the snow. But there's one part left that nobody's touched, yet partly because it's not exactly appetizing at first glance. The stomach. It's lying in the snow, where it was set aside during butchering frozen solid into a lumpy greenish balloon. Most people today would walk right past it. You, however, have lived long enough out here to know in the Ice Age, this is not garbage. This is cookware. A frozen stomach is tough as leather, but flexible once thawed. You drag it back toward camp, stomping the snow away from your boots, and set it near the fire until it softens. The smell that seeps out is memorable. A mix of half-digested moss, bitter grass, and the faint musk of the animal itself. You wrinkle your nose, but your stomach doesn't care. The trick is simple. Clean it out just enough to get rid of the worst bits, but not so much that you lose its shape. Then fill it with what you've got: chunks of meat, too small to roast, scraps of fat, maybe some roots or dried berries, if you can spare them. Pour in melted snow, until it's half full. Tie the top tight with sinew and set it right in the embers. The stomach lining is thick, waterproof, and heat-resistant enough to hold together as the contents simmer. You can hear it hiss and pop, smell the steam escaping from tiny seams. The liquid inside turns cloudy with fat. The meat softens, the roots break down, and the berries, if you used any dye, the broth a strange but beautiful color. When you untie it, the steam hits your face like a hot, meaty fog. The pot sags in your hands, still holding its shape, and you ladle out portions with a carved bone scoop. The broth is rich, the fat glistening on the surface. The meat is tender, the roots sweet from the long cooking. Even the stomach lining itself, scraped thin, can be eaten chewy but filling. This method isn't just practical, it's ancient. Before pots were made from clay or metal, stomachs, bladders, and hides were the first cooking vessels. Some hunters still carry a rolled-up stomach in their packs, just in case they need to boil water far from camp. By the time the pot is empty, your belly is full, your fingers greasy, and the smell of the reindeer is in your hair. You toss the last scraps of the lining into the fire, knowing nothing of the animal has gone to waste. Tomorrow, maybe you'll cook in a mammoth stomach instead, if you're lucky enough to find one. Until then, this meal will keep you warm through the long, dark hours ahead. The wind hasn't let up for 3 days. Hunting is nearly impossible. Every track vanishes under drifting snow. Every river hole you open freezes shut before you can catch more than a few fish. The meat stash is down to brittle strips and a puddle of rendered fat so small you could drink it in one gulp, which leaves you with insects. Not the juicy grasshoppers and beetles of warmer seasons. Those are frozen somewhere deep in the soil waiting for the thaw. No, what's left in winter are the stubborn survivors, larvae buried in rotting wood clusters of frozen ants inside hollow logs, the occasional sluggish beetle clinging to life in a crevice. You start by breaking apart a fallen tree, its core softened by decay. The first strike sends up a cloud of wood dust that sparkles in the pale light. Inside, pale grubs curl and squirm slowly.